Hello, welcome to Wedding Planning Wednesdays. I am Jane New. I am the founder of a company called UNS Events based in Los Angeles. And I am a wedding planner that helps engaged couples plan their weddings from beginning to end. I love supporting my couples and keeping their stress to a minimum and enjoyment to a maximum by providing step by step guidance along their planning journey. So now that you've set your budget or rough budget for your wedding, the next big step you would think might be picking a venue, but it's actually setting a date. And setting a date and venue sort of go hand in hand because you have to consider venue availability and all of those things. But before any of that, there's definitely things that you can ask yourself and your partner as well to figure out what season, what month, what date might be the best for you. I put out a sort of last minute question on Threads to see what people utilize to pick their wedding dates. And an interesting one came up. One was numerology, which I hadn't even considered or I haven't ever really thought about. But I do know one client who did use numerology to choose their wedding date. And I think this is just, it's sort of like astrology where it's a study or belief in that numbers and energy and like things like that are intertwined, and you can maybe find a date that's going to be a lucky one for you and your partner to get married on. I think the first thing you want to think about is you want to consider a date that may be meaningful to you. So, for instance, maybe it's the day that you met, or maybe it's your anniversary in terms of when you started dating or becoming a couple. There's some people that do get married on another day before their actual wedding because for various reasons they might want to get married on paper earlier, or they may be saving a money for their wedding, so they want to just put it on a later date. So maybe you want to get married on the day, like have a wedding on the day that you got married on paper at City Hall or something like that. So maybe it's a cultural day that is important to you or significance to you. And for instance, I know a couple getting married on New Year's Eve because they just really love New Year's Eve and they want to ring in the new year with all of their closest friends and family and get married as well. So that's something that's just personal to them. And I think you want to talk about what might be personally meaningful to you. The second one, which is a very, very big factor, is weather, of course, and seasons. I'm based in Los Angeles, so weather isn't as much of a concern, although there's definitely months where rain could be an issue and it could be just unseasonably cold or hot. But for the most part, inclement weather in Los Angeles isn't as big of a concern. I used to do a lot of weddings and events in New York as well, but that, there's definitely off-peak months that you can book where it's a little bit less expensive, but there's definitely popular months in those seasons. And of course, fall tends to be a really, really great season to get married because you're in between hot summer and cold winter. But we'll get into that a little bit after. In terms of weather, though, you always want to be mindful of having a backup plan or space for inclement weather. A lot of places that do experience weather elements, such as New York or anywhere else that has seasons, they usually have some type of backup plan. Sometimes you do have to plan for a tent. And that gets a little bit pricey, but that's something you definitely want to ask your venue to see if they have something built in. A lot of times hotels or restaurants, if they have an outdoor space that they're offering you for the actual wedding, it'll typically come with a backup space because it's a little bit, I feel like it's a little bit unfair to ask the client to cover another, set of, like to allocate another budget or additional budget to something that's not in their control. Another thing is some people want a year or more to plan. Other people just really want to get married and get going, and they just don't want that a long runway to plan. So I think that also comes into play. So let's say you got engaged in January and you really want a fall wedding or a summer wedding in June. It's definitely possible. And if your preference is to just work really quickly and just get it done, then I think it's totally fine. It's just really a personal preference. But let's say you want more than a year to plan and you're looking at the year after. So let's say you got engaged in January 2025 and you want to get married in 2026, but you want around a year to plan, but no more than 18 months. And I would definitely look at spring 2025. I personally think it's always helpful to have a little bit more time to plan, especially if you and your partner have busy lives. So, you want to take the planning in phases and chunks and make sure that you have time to make these decisions thoughtfully. But on the flip side, I don't know about you, but I'm definitely an overthinker. I I have to weigh like 20,000 pros and cons before I make a decision sometimes. So having less time and having that pressure just to make the decision might work better for someone like me. So even for us, when we got married, we were engaged in January and we were exploring the year after. But to be honest, as we were planning looking for venues, we just didn't really feel like waiting anymore. So we ended up getting married in November of that year, and we booked the venue maybe 8 months before the wedding. So it just kind of really depends, but it's something that you do want to think about. If you do know your personality and you're truly flexible, I think that's obviously the best way to go about it. But I think a year or so average, 8 to 12 months, is a great window of time to just plan your wedding. The next question I would ask is, are your closest friends and family that you definitely want to be at the wedding, that you want at the wedding, are they available for the dates that you're thinking? So, for example, you know that you want your parents, your siblings, your best circle of friends, your inner circle, you know that you want them to be there, then I would definitely float those date options to them to see if they can hold those dates for you. And then, of course, if they're not available on some dates, then you can totally just eliminate them pretty easily. That's just something that you want to get ahead of, because you don't want to book your venue and then realize someone can't make it because of whatever reason. And usually when you're asking them these questions, it's about a year out. So even if they have kids or just other responsibilities that they need to plan around, they have enough time to do that. And more often than not, or most of the time, those people will get the notice about the date much earlier than other people who receive the save the date. So you know that they're definitely going to be there. And I think that's something you definitely want to consider and to make sure that you get ahead of. And just to make it easier, I would definitely pick a few days, unless it's a date that's really, really significant to the two of you. And hopefully that date works for most people then. But I would give a few days just to ensure that, the 20 to 50 people that are very important to you can make it. The last thing I would consider when setting your wedding date is your guest experience. So if you're having like a destination wedding or a location, maybe it's not a destination wedding for you, but it's a lot of people will still have to travel to get to the wedding. So for instance, we lived in New York at the time when we were getting married, but our wedding was in LA, but a lot of our guest list was traveling from New York. So we knew that they would still have to make arrangements. And it's not a long trip or anything like that. But our wedding was also on a Friday. So people would have to get off work early or take a day off. And so we wanted to give them enough time to do that. Sometimes, I mean, I love a Friday wedding, to be honest, because I also love to party. So if I go to a Friday wedding, I'm really grateful that I have the entire weekend to recover, but not everyone can take a day off or whatnot. So if you want to maximize people being able to attend, then perhaps Saturday is the best, because most people will leave or travel to the wedding destination on Friday and then go to the wedding Saturday and then go home on Sunday. But I mean, who's working Friday afternoons anymore, right? So I think if you want to maximize the number of guests, then you can definitely shoot for Saturday. But I think a Friday wedding, for me at least, is totally acceptable, as long as you give people notice and then they just make a weekend out of wherever it is. I almost sometimes think that Sunday's a little bit harder because Monday is a work day, so they might still have to take that day off anyway if they're traveling back to somewhere. And also, if you're considering a holiday weekend, that's not my favorite weekend to recommend to clients or to attend a wedding, just because sometimes it's expensive to travel during those weekends. Although it's nice to have that built in kind of holiday day, um, so that you don't have to take a day off or whatever. But sometimes people want to reserve their holiday weekends to spend time with their families, or go travel to see their families. But sometimes the venue availability is something that you cannot control, right? So you do have to do what's best for you. But that's just something to consider when picking a holiday weekend, that it may be tougher for some people if travel is just more expensive. But again, with anything, like anything else, I think giving enough notice is always just really helpful, and just giving them as much information as possible, even though I've been seeing online nobody reads invitations or websites or anything, which is I'm guilty of as well. Even though I'm a wedding planner, as an attendee, I've definitely been that person to ask questions. So don't be that person if you're a guest. And if your wedding guests or invitees do ask you questions, just tell them, please refer to the invite or please refer to the website. And I think that's totally, totally fair. Or just send them the link. You don't even have to say that. So those are my kind of 5 top tips for picking a wedding date. This is just one, or the first of many, many decisions that you'll have to make. But of course, picking a date and the venue is really, really the biggest first step. And then everything else will kind of start to fall into place depending on where you pick and what date you choose as well. If you have any questions about setting a wedding date, please drop them in the chat. But otherwise, as usual, I have prepped some frequently asked questions that I think come up when people are trying to choose a wedding date. So the first one is, what if I'm really flexible for a wedding date? Like I really just don't know uh, what date I want. I don't really care. My partner and I are really open to it. So then if that's the case, then I would just think about how long you want to plan. And then who doesn't want nice weather on their wedding day? I think going for a good weather month is really good, or good weather season. But again, if budget is a concern and you live somewhere like that has 4 seasons, then I would definitely consider potentially doing an off peak month like January or February, where it's bound to be less expensive for those dates, because they don't get a lot of sales or bookings for those dates. So their pricing is usually a little bit lower. And I do love winter weddings, actually. I know it's really cold, but as long as the space is indoors, I think it can feel really, really cozy. And I think it can be really nice still. It has a really, really different vibe. So if you're not opposed to having a winter wedding, I think that's a great option. But again, I would just go down the other list of questions. If you don't have a personal preference, that's totally fine. But there's a lot of other factors that can come into play. Um, the most popular wedding months. I had to Google this and ChatGPT it, but the Knot always has sort of a report on the most popular wedding months based on surveys that they take from real couples. And it appears that October, with around 17% of the weddings, October is the number one popular month. And we find that to be true within our business as well. It's definitely one of the busiest months. And we get a lot of inquiries for the same dates. And I really think that's mostly because of weather. And a lot of people also get engaged in the holiday season. So they might be getting engaged the November, December, January before that. So it's kind of like a perfect window of like 9 to 11 months to plan. And so I'm guessing that puts October as a top contender. But of course, fall, you have that short window where the weather is usually very amazing. It's not too hot, not too cold, not too rainy. And in some places, the fall foliage is really beautiful. So I understand why October is a really, really popular month. The next one is September, followed by June, and then May and August. And again, this is what we find as true as well. August, at least in California, and September can get really, really hot. So you do have to plan for kind of extreme heat. But a lot of times, of course, the ceremony doesn't really start till a couple hours before sunset. So it does kind of tend to get cooler, especially if you're doing outdoor. But as a planner, it does get a little bit challenging with weather. We've definitely been in 100-degree heat waves as a planner, but or as a vendor or as a planning team, and that it was a little bit rough for all of the vendors, but we all got through it. And then the evening was just beautiful, beautiful weather. If you don't have any more questions, I'm going to end this here. I hope that was helpful. Just information to help you kind of set your wedding date. And, you don't have to get so stressed about it. It's something that should be fun to figure out. I did see a response to my question on Threads who they were planning for a November 2022 wedding, and the venue they wanted ended up getting a cancellation in August. So in February of that year, they pivoted and then they planned their wedding in 6 months, which I thought was really was fun. So because at that point you're like, let's just go and let's just get it done. And so I think that adrenaline and energy is fun too, if that fits with your planning personality. Next week, I am launching my digital wedding planner that I've been talking about. It's a toolkit of templates from Google Sheets and Google Docs and Google Slides. And it's a digital product really meant to help couples who don't necessarily want or need a full service planner. Like you're really excited to plan your own wedding, but you're just not sure what steps to take, what order you should take the steps in. You just kind of want a guide of what to do next. And throughout the documents, I think the great thing about Google Sheets and Google Docs is that you can put comments. And so I put all of my comments and recommendations and suggestions throughout the doc. And because this is my first time launching it and actually starting to sell it, I will be having some fun bonuses. So please follow us on Instagram. Our business page is at You and Us. You is spelled like my name, YUANDUS. For updates, you can sign up for my newsletter, which is on my channel's homepage. If you go there and it's linked there, and you can just subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. I'll be posting more content, just talking about what the product is, what bonuses I'll be offering when I'm launching. But thank you for joining Wedding Planning Wednesdays, and I'll see you next time. Bye.